Good evening.
Malalo.
Welcome to the 2024 Intern Tutor Workshop. Good evening and welcome to the 2024 Intern Tutor Workshop. Congratulations on passing your degree. Please take note of the following. To ask questions, please use the Q&A function on the Teams or the comment section if you are joining us on YouTube or Facebook. The session is 3 hours. Please stay until the end to get all the information firsthand. Towards the end of the workshop, you will be requested to complete the survey to confirm your attendance and also rate the workshop. The presentations will be available on the website after the workshop. From the office, we welcome you, and I will be sharing and presenting on the slides regarding the Intern Tutor Workshop for 2024, where we will focus on the legal framework as well as the SAPC website. The introduction to the pre-registration is as follows: that you have now successfully completed your undergraduate program and because you wrote your final examinations from your university, and we did say congratulations to that. Now it is time or your opportunity to apply the knowledge and skills that you have acquired from all those years of studying in a practice setting under a direct supervision of a pharmacist. The program and just some house rules is displayed on the screen, and I am at the present moment doing the welcoming, which is going to include my acknowledgement of senior managers from the Office of the Registrar SAPC, as well as managers that are joining us today. And also a big thank you to the tutors and interns who have taken this opportunity to be part of this journey at this hour. We will then have our assessor, CPD assessor, take us through the CPD portfolio. And then we are asking that we shorten our breaks to just 10 minutes so that we are able to cater for everything that needs to happen this evening with regards to the presentations and giving you in-depth information. We will thereafter have another session with the CPD assessor and our moderator. After that, we will then have an open Q&A session as explained in terms of how the process will unfold, which is going to be facilitated by CSR. And then we will have a closure so that everybody can join their family members. This is an outline of the presentation that I will be taking you through, which is going to comprise of the legal framework, the pre-registration evaluation, the SAPC website, their interaction with regards to the intern pages, which constitute CPD pages, annual declaration, CPD submission, CPD assessment feedback, as well as CPD queries submission to the office that interns may have from time to time. We will also then focus on some components that may contribute to delaying a release from internship for an intern. We will also then focus on CPD reassessments, appeals, and the consultation procedures that the office undertakes in order to assist interns relating to their CPDs. We will also focus on the unprofessional conduct behaviors, which you would rather stay away from because they can be quite harsh and disturbing. We will also then do the 2023 CPD competency statistics just to show the trends. We will then give you a snippet of the process for applying for community service once you have met all requirements for your internship, and the procedures and processes of how you can contact Pharmacy Council. Right, so the legal framework for the pre-registration is provided for in the Pharmacy Act of 53 of 1974 as amended, which then stipulates the registration with council as an intern, which is considered essential. But I would like to say, for the purpose of this workshop and your take-home message, that it is actually a non-negotiable, that you register with council before you commence with your internship. And there is a criteria for that registration, which requires an approved premises. Whether you are in community sector, institutional sector, manufacturing, or academia, it does not matter. The premises needs to be approved. The second criteria is regarding that a contract with a tutor who is approved by council is also completed by the intern, and a payment of the prescribed fee. We then also refer to the pharmacy graduate is required to undergo a minimum of 12 months practical training. And this is covered by the regulations relating to pharmacy education and training, as well as regulations relating to the registration of persons and maintenance of registers. We like to say it as this is your 5th year of education and training in a structured learning environment. So do take it as seriously as you did your undergraduate BPharm. I am continuing with the legal framework still covered or provided for within the same Act. This is regarding the scope of practice of a pharmacist intern, which is exactly the same as that of a pharmacist, but under supervision of an approved tutor. And this is provided for in the regulations relating to the practice of pharmacy, which is Regulation 5. Interns in manufacturing or academia must provide 400 hours of supervised practice in an approved community, or sometimes it's called hospital, otherwise institutional pharmacy, all the same. The tutor remains responsible. Arrangements prior to the period of the declaration of 400 hours must be made, and the periods are not broken. They are not supposed to be consecutive 5 days. I wanted to say you don't jump, you don't skip, you don't alternate. It has to be conservative. And records must be kept. In pharmacy, we have a saying, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So make sure that everything is documented. The supervising pharmacist submits progress reports online. We are also going to bring your attention to a process referred to as a cessation of contract, where an intern may be orphaned, or rather an intern may be affected by a tutor leaving their place of work, or on mutual agreement that the working relationship, tutor-intern or intern-tutor relationship is coming to an end. Otherwise, you are then required to take responsibility as an intern to make sure that you inform council in a way of an application about the changes, because they are then effected on the register. Otherwise, if this process is not followed to the core, it then disrupts your internship year and may cause a delay. So you need to then submit the application online. You also then need to upload a new contract with your new tutor, who is also required to be approved by council, as well as a payment of the prescribed fee. And it is very, very important, as you can see, it's in bold, that 7 days prior to the session, that is where council is able to acknowledge your practical training, and then it does not get interrupted. And very importantly, if there is one missing document that's not submitted as part of this application, the start date or recognizing your application will be the date when you submit the last document required. So please make sure that all is updated and follow up if necessary. The pre-registration evaluation comprises of 4 components. That is the pre-registration examination. The next slide is going to zoom into the criteria or the requirements. Number 2 is the CPD portfolio, your progress reports, as well as the 365 practical of supervised of practical training or supervised practice. Now we're zooming into the requirements for the online open book examination that gets conducted, which comprises 120 questions, 1 mark each with no negative marking applied. And you have 2 sections in the paper, which is the general practice section comprising of 70% and a calculation section comprising of 30%. Now the pass mark is 50%. However, you do need to have achieved a sub-minimum on the general section of 50% as well as a sub-minimum 60% on the calculation section. I'm going to then move on to the CPD entries as well as the proof of competence. So it's broken down to explain that 1 competency standards per domain, and there is a compulsory competency standard 5.3. The assessment is the results are released as per the schedule published, which we are going to look at before the end of my presentation. And it is also the same schedule is provided for in the Intern Tutor Manual. Results for the entry submitted after submission deadline will be released late. I think it goes without saying. Late submission, late results will then be published. Resubmitting entries not yet successful, you then need to do that so that we can eventually get to a successful entry. And proof of competence is successful in all 6 entries. Now, the third part is regarding the progress reports, which is starting with the requirements for those registered in the sector, institutional or community, which requires a minimum, not a minimum, but submit all 7 progress reports rather. And those that are in manufacturing are required to submit 9 progress reports, including the declaration 400 hours. And those in academia would then be required to submit 3 progress reports, declaration 400 hours, as well as the achievement of master's qualification. And very importantly, across all sectors, is that favorable reports, of your progress reports need to be received by the office. Otherwise, it jeopardizes your chance and opportunity to be released as you would have envisaged. So make sure that you maintain a good professional conduct, behavior, and good working relations with your tutor. Right. When I spoke about the cessation of contract, I needed to say that in instances where it's unforeseen circumstances, you still need to remain responsible in order to make sure that the application is received and processed by the office. And I'm mentioning this because on this slide, we are displaying the deadlines, and that's a scary part of this presentation. The deadlines, which in red, we have just aligned or rather reflected red as a danger zone to say if you miss these deadlines, you can be rest assured that you are going to miss the next exams that have been scheduled for this year. We've already conducted the first exam in March, which anybody who results were not released on the 22nd of January either fell into a late booking or did not make it for the examination. So please take note of this. And what is different on this slide is that I'm going to focus on the third column, which is an additional step to also, tutors, ensure that tutors take a responsibility, which is just the dates that they need to also take cognizance of in terms of submitting or verifying the entry submitted. As outlined throughout until January of 2025. And just to say, whilst the tutors have the responsibility to do their part, it starts with the intern. If you miss your deadline, it's going to have a ripple effect. The tutor might miss their deadline and the results will definitely not be released according to the timelines as you wish. It will then fall into the next release date. So, what is also very important on this slide is that according to council policy, appeals must be submitted within 1 calendar month after the release of the results. And again, another danger zone, entries must be submitted by 12 p.m. on the last date of submission. Entries submitted after that time on the last date will be assessed in the next cycle. And I think that makes all sense. Also to avoid, system glitches and no one is in the office, you might want to submit it when the office of the registrar is open for any further assistance that you may require. Now, we also would like to urge and advise interns to submit 6 CPD entries within the first 6 months of their registration. A couple of workshops have been run to provide you with the tools and necessary, information regarding CPD entries and the requirements. So by now, you should be trying to catch up and submitting these entries. Where if you have already prepared them, you are now equipped and you can submit and be sure that you are going to get it right. And the last thing to note is also that for towards the end of the year, if entries are submitted after the 27th of November 2024, they will only be assessed in January. If you submit and keep submitting, at the 10th and subsequent CPD submissions, there will be a fee levied against you in order for those submissions to be evaluated. That red triangle is the danger zone of the noting that I was referring to. And please revisit it so that you can refresh your minds. Right. The next part is things to happen, still to come in the very near future, which is regarding CPD feedback workshops. And the workshop dates are displayed on the screen, 12th of June 2024, as well as the 15th of August 2024. And the purpose of this is to respond to intern CPD queries, to share the CPD assessment experience, as well as to guide interns on how to improve the quality of their CPD entries. Right. On the next slide, we have examination dates, and this is going to be covered in the next workshop that I can confirm right now that it will be in May of 2024, and we will give you more detailed information regarding the examination. But however, for preparation purposes, we have just indicated on the first column the practice examination dates, which is a compulsory activity before you sit for your first examination to have done a practice examination. So do look out for the information. That would be for the preparations for the August examinations, and for those interns who have been registered for 6 months at the time of the exam would then be eligible to write that examination. Of course, with the CPD requirements in the slides to follow, I will go in depth. And the last exam for the year will be 22nd, 23rd October. And these dates are subject to change. So please make sure that you stay tuned on Council's website and focusing on the intern overview tabs so that you are up to date, as well as your emails. And make sure that you've updated those emails. Important to note is that all bookings must be done online before the closing date, and late booking fee will be charged after the closing date until 14 days before the examination. And just for interest's sake, the information that I'm giving you, you can verify on the website. The late booking fee is about 1,299. Exam entrance requirements, I've touched a little bit on this, but I'm going to try and give in-depth information and areas of focus. So if you have been registered for 6 months, a minimum of 6 months, you are then required to have submitted all 6 entries. These are CPD entries, and be competent in at least 3. You should have also done I said it's compulsory, practice examination, and your tutor would have then needed to also submit 3 progress reports. And it is outlined and specified which of the 3 are required, which is the 12 weeks personal and professional development report, the 24 weeks personal and professional development report, and sectoral experience checklist. And for interns registered in their 9th month or more, must definitely also have submitted all 6 CPD entries and completed the practice examination. And therein is the requirement for the progress reports by the tutor, and those are 4. And I will then focus on the part where you have probably been unsuccessful and exceeded the number of attempts permitted or approved, which then means you can write for the first and the second time. And the third attempt and subsequent attempts also attract a fee, which you need to pay for while you are booking for that examination. And in terms of the tutor progress reports, it's aligned to the period that the intern has been registered for. And the fee, just for interest again, as I said, you can verify this information with the published board notice for 2024 fees, and that fee is 2,629 rands. Oh, very important. That writing in red should have been in green, because it's a good thing. Your tutor has overall access to the overall exam, results. So there's no hiding. It's transparent, but it's to assist you. Right, now I'm going to go into the nice part. I think all my colleague interns are familiar with the website, where it is, if you access the website, you are able to navigate through it in order to access the 2024 manual over here. And then if you want to log in, you can log in under this tab. And further to that, you're also able to then download the 2024 manual from this point, as well as download the relevant Intern CPD user manual. So all the information is provided for on our lovely website. Right, now this is the secured site. Once you have logged on, you have all these nice functionalities that you can interact with, and you are then good to go. I'm sure all my wonderful interns are familiar with the secured site. Right, now we go to the part about completing your annual declaration. It's annual, you do it annually. So you are also not excused from this process. You didn't need to go and update your annual declaration. If you do not do this, you may not be able to submit your CPD entries. So it is important that you do that. It flashes right in your eyes and you cannot ignore it. The next part is after you've completed your annual declaration, it will then prompt you as you go through the tabs. It speaks to you. Employment, you need to complete the information that's required under that tab. Then it takes you to the domain competencies. You complete that in that order. And then there's also an interesting part where it asks you if you've got a secondary area of practice. But the main point to take away is that in terms of the domain competencies that you complete, the second slide is going to show you where then now it says you, according to us, are definitely a practicing pharmacist, practicing the scope of practice of that as a pharmacist, but you're an intern. You are allowed that scope, except you are under supervision by a pharmacist. Right. And then you can either disagree or agree. But in this instance, I think you have to agree unless if you've made a mistake. The next slide is going to show you just what to do if you think you made a mistake. You can then come here and update, and it will take you back to that whole, domain competencies where you are going through the tabs as they prompt you, and you're feeding the system with the necessary information so that it can interpret it accordingly. Right. This is the same slide with regards to updating, seeing your status as whether you're practicing or not. And then we can then now go on to the working pages where you would need to then submit your CPD entries after you've passed the step that I've just displayed. And we do emphasize that as much as you can see the outcome here on this page, that as you will see on the next page, this is a summary. We urge you to go inside of the tabs so that you can get proper information and comments that may have been submitted, because this is your submission page. You are seeing each domain and you click on the relevant domain. I'm going to ignore this one that says awaiting submission because it's flashing in your eyes that it's awaiting submission. But for these ones that write submitted for compliance, please do click on it to see what other information is covered under that submitted for compliance. because if there are comments from the intern, even if they're good comments, you do want to see them. You want to see how you fared, and if there are comments for anything to be, updated or changed, you then need to be able to view that as well. And just to say that the CPD cycle, which I'm thinking you are familiar with or you've interacted with, it's got 4 cycles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you need to complete all cycles in order for your CPD entry to be successful. As I said, yours is a structured learning with the domains provided. Domain and competencies, they are outlined. There are 6, which is why you have to meet all 6, CPD entry requirements and be successful in all for the competency to be deemed successful. So I am going to now move to the Intern CPD submission guide, which is also available on the website, where the registered persons, you are a registered person, and pharmacist intern, you go under CPDs, and then you navigate whatever information you're looking for. In order to access the CPD activity submission by intern, you can also do that. On this page here, it is going to follow where I said when the outcome is a summarized outcome, you can actually go into the entry so that you can see the actual content underneath that domain. As you can see here, it says awaiting submission. And then you may also have not yet successful, which is the outcome for that competency. And if you want to see the report, then you're able to see the report of the contents provided in order to make the necessary changes. And then this one here on the right is indicating a successful CPD entries, which is submitted for compliance, and your status would then be reporting successful, as well as interacting with the report so that you can employ the same tactics in the future in your career, or just to know how well you did and where you actually excelled. Right, unsuccessful CPD entry submitted for compliance, that will be the status. And I'm not going to spend much time here because the cycles keep, until you are successful, and obviously making sure that you avoid a penalty fee of the 10th submission. You then correct and you ask for assistance. I then want to just focus on some of the components that may lead to a delay in releasing you, or rather an intern from internship. We did indicate the submission deadline of the 27th of November 2024, that it will fall in the cycle of the January 2025 release. If you're not successful in all CPD entries, then you are not, obviously, it's starting to look shaky. And I personally, this word is heavy, but it is true. We are going to say if you're not successful in the pre-registration examination, that's also a hindrance. If you do not have, or you rather have incomplete progress reports, that is another hindrance. And if you do not have a minimum of 365 days of practical training, that is another hindrance to release from internship. On this slide, we are just highlighting some of the scenarios that have presented themselves, and for you to plan better so that you avoid disappointments in the future, where interns are asking for CPDs to be marked because they've already secured a placement with a potential employer, and the in-betweens and a basket full of other things that it can't be facilitated because of that reason. And another one will say, good day, I hope this finds you well. I'm writing to just find out when the next CPD results will be released, as I submitted last year, and I'm worried that this may stop me from getting released. And last year would have been the date of 27th November. It is last year, but it's after the deadline. Another one could most likely say, is there no way I can please request an exception to be made for me, as well as seeing that I'm desperate to start as soon as possible. So all of these things are desperate, scenarios which can be otherwise avoided if you plan better and you interact with the office, with the manual, with your tutor, and you just plan your 5th year of this program. Another one can say, can my outstanding CPDs please be released faster in order to keep my position? So they're all related and linked to the prospect of community service, which is wonderful, but wonderful needs to be planned for. Right. Intern CPD queries. Interns must take responsibility. I cannot overemphasize this, of all CPD related matters, and we mean all, including CPD submissions, queries to the SAPC, and no parents or family. Guys, code of conduct is a big thing, and popular of late. So no parents or family members should contact SAPC regarding related matters on behalf of the intern. And the office does not want to be rude and say, we don't talk to parents. Protect your parents and don't put them in the compromising position of wanting to speak on your behalf. Right, the CPD reassessment and appeals, as well as assessor consultations, are as follows. Reassessment of CPD entries and appeal procedure. I did say that within 30 days or a calendar month, it is a written submission submitted to council. You pay a non-refundable fee as determined by council, and results to be communicated to the intern within 14 days of receipt of the results from the moderator. And should the intern not be satisfied with the reassessment or reanalysis, they may then initiate an appeals process in terms of council's policy. This information is also provided in the intern tutor manual that I've referred to. In terms of the intern and assessor moderator consultation procedures, guys, we've had some very scary, gory things happening. Please don't find yourself in a position where you are threatening the assessor or moderator. So communication between the intern and the assessor or moderator will be facilitated by the office, and strictly so. The intern may only use emails and will not communicate outside the times that have been opened by the assessor or the moderator. And that's it on this slide. Unprofessional conduct. It does happen. Some of the actions that will be considered as unprofessional conduct, just to give you some insight, is, I think I alluded to this, pressurizing or pressuring the assessor or moderator to mark CPD entries, contacting the assessor, facilitated by the office. It was in the previous slide. I'm not going to dwell on this. Threatening the assessor, it's happened before. Please do not do it. Do not do it. Plagiarism of present and past intern CPD entries. Intern CPD entries will be checked for plagiarism. You do not want to find yourself in this situation because it will delay everything that you've planned for. Unprofessional behavior will result in disciplinary action and being taken against that particular intern. This is regarding the statistics. As I said, we'll be looking at the trends so that you have a picture. Look at that big number. This is the 2023 data. It's 1,146 registered interns, 2023, and maybe just a little bit, a year prior to 2023. However, number of interns in CPD successful, 790, which is 69%. Number of interns not yet competent is 356. You don't want to find yourself in the 356, whatever the circumstances, which is 31%. Right. Important information is that annual fees for interns are payable by the 1st of June each year. Internship must be completed within 12 months. And we did say it's a minimum of 12 months. Employment contract is only for a year. Employers are only able to reserve the intern position for the period of the contract. And I think this down tells you about this 5th year that has to be taken absolutely serious so you don't find yourself falling outside the employer's contract. If not completed in 12 months, then there's an extension contract with the same tutor, or you get another tutor. Attend the relevant workshops the following year to make sure that you're up to date with the information that's been communicated. And in-test progress reports is made available. I did say have a good working relationship. Intern secure side, your employer has preview to that information, tutor as well on the secure side, and it's also shared with the NDOH for the purpose of planning for community service placements. This now brings us to applying for community service, which interns will then apply on that link, which you can get, but it's on that link, it's not with SAPC. And the ICSP will facilitate placements for interns who have met all internship requirements for community service. You ensure that you meet the requirements. That's now your responsibility, and further information to follow in the CSP workshop. Over here, it is just to say, if you want to submit your CPD query, for instance, you can then contact or go to the website and put in or complete the necessary fields, starting with your P number. And then you can choose the category. You are an intern. And you then become very specific so that the search engine can be directed accordingly, where it is concerning continuous professional development, and the query then will get submitted to the dashboard of Pharmacy Council for attention. And we also have an interns@sapc.za.org email address, which I believe all interns are aware of. If not, there it is, where you are able to communicate matters relating to internship, CPD queries as well, so that you can get assistance, as well as the normal information that you find on the website, which is the operating hours of council, as well as the customer care lines and the customer care email address. I have brought this sailing to the end, and I hope you enjoyed it. If there are questions, they will be taken at the end. I am now going to hand over to Ms. Nancy for her presentation, Assessor CPD. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope I'm audible. I'll be taking you through the CPD, how it's submitted, and I'm one of the assessors. I'm not sure if my slides are moving. Are the slides moving?
No, Nancy, just click on the slide with, okay, now it's moving.
Thank you. So the outline of the presentation is as presented here, and we are 3 assessors and my moderator who will be taking you through. I'm glad that we are talking to interns who has registered, who has declared that they are active, and they've started submitting their CPDs. So we are just brushing through on this 3rd workshop. I guess everyone will catch up. Important resources that are very important for your CPDs. It's your Tutor Intern Manual. We take this as an intern Bible that needs to be, used for almost everything throughout this internship year. So the other resources will be your tutor. Tutors plays a very important role in your training, and you have been navigated through the website of the SAPC, so you should be able to navigate your way through. There are terminologies that we use through the CPD, which will take you through. Within a CPD, the first thing that you have to identify is a domain. Within that domain, there are competency standards. One domain, a number of competency standards, and within each competency standard, there are behavioral statements. I refer to them as the competency standard to me becomes a question, and the behavioral statement becomes answers that you can check yourself against, whether you are doing it right or not. We've got 6 domains, and we are requested to submit 1 competency standard within the 6 domains. So when we talk of a competency standard is what one needs to, make sure that you have identified the right competency standard, which you should be able to manage in terms of its behavioral statement when you go into applying what you have chosen as a competency standard. And it's a must that all interns must do a CPDs. There is no any other way. Like I said, the terminology that we use in the manual is domain, is competency standard, is behavioral statement. Maybe let's go to the next slide, which is more broader. Like here, the example that is given is on domain 2, which is safe and rational use of medicines and medical devices. Within this domain 2, you can see on your far right, there are competency standards. There are about 8. You are requested to submit one. The example that is given here, they've chosen a competency standard 2.6, and its behavioral statements are highlighted there. So to me, the behavioral statement becomes the answer of the question that you have asked, to say, this is what I need to comply with. And remember, you must comply to at least 75% of your behavior assessment. You should be able to answer to behavioral statement at least to 75%. The CPD, we are used to hearing about CPD points, but with pharmaceutical services, we are using continuing professional development as a cycle, not the points that goes with it. So right now we are using CPD as cycles. So remember, CPD is for every professional. Once you are a registered professional, you have to keep abreast of what is happening around you. So CPD is a way to go. In pharmacy, the CPD cycle consists of 4 stages. Your reflection, planning, implementation, and finally the evaluation. So once you have completed the 4 steps of the CPD cycle, then you can be deemed competent depending on the outcome. The CPD cycle at every stage is assessed. So the reflection will be assessed, planning, implementation, and the evaluation. They all get assessed, and the most important is the tense and the grammar and all that goes with it must be correct as well. So the first step is reflection. With reflection, you need to, after choosing the domain, after choosing the competency standard, when you start with the cycle, you should be able to reflect and say, what is it that I need to learn? What is it that I do not know? And behind that title that you will come up with, there must be a story to tell, to say, this is what happened, this is what made me realize that I don't know this. So what is it that I'm going to do to make sure that I close that gap? And in the process of the reflection, you should be able to say, if this is what I want to know, then if this is what I'm going to do to make sure that I close that gap, will I be able to come up with an activity to close that gap? Will this activity give me, evidence that will show that I've done I've done this activity in closing the gap? So the reason I'm saying our manual is our Bible. In it, it has answers, questions and answers. So there will be a criteria that we will use to check if your reflection, step 1, which is reflection, it's done the way it's supposed to be. It's possible that you might identify a reflection, a competency standard, a problem statement, but when you come up with the title does not really talk to what you want to learn, or you just took the competency standard as it is and put it as a title. So the criteria will tell you to say, here something is not right. I'm not going to get any more. So it's like an open exam. You can check yourself before you even submit. So even the description of the learning need and coming up with the problem also has a criteria. If it's irrelevant, you don't get anything. If you just say, as a pharmacist, this is what we have to do, it will be a general description. But when we see the problem statement, the learning gap, how you are going to close that gap, what is it that you want to learn, is then that you get marks that are allocated, starting from reflection itself. So the assessment criteria is an open book for me, because whatever you came up with, you can be able to correct yourselves. To if you answer these questions, you should be able to see if your reflection, which is step 1, will give you a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Then there is a checklist. Use your manual, there is a checklist. Before you click next, you should be able to answer those questions. And if you are happy, is then that you can go on and go to the next step. The next step is planning. You have identified a learning need. You have identified how you can close that gap, but we need to see it written. What is it that I'm going to do? How am I going to do it? Why am I doing it? And when will I do it to ensure that the activity gets closed? The most important thing with planning is that as you answer those questions, you use a future tense. Once you say, I've done it, it means there has never been planning. So planning means it's a future tense. This is what I am going to do to close the gap. So those answers, those questions need to be answered. Like I said, each and every step has a criteria that needs to be met. You read, in my planning, did I answer this? Did I answer that? Did I answer that? So as you do that, you are looking at the marks as well to say, no, this statement of mine in terms of planning, it will give me a 1, or it will give me a 2, or it will give me a 3. Don't ever forget, competency standard has behavioral statements that needs to be met. Once you don't meet the 75% behavioral statement, obviously you know you are not getting into a 2. You will remain 1 or 0. So you must make sure that you answer according to the criteria. The checklist will always be there. Before you click to the next step, did I? You make sure that you answer those questions that are given in a checklist for you to be sure that you have done the right thing. That was step number 2. Step number 3, which is implementation. You have planned and said, this is what I'm going to do, why I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, and how I'm going to do it. So as you go through implementation, you will be answering all those steps that you have put. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. Please make sure that if there are resources that were mentioned in terms of planning, to say, I'm going to use GPP, or I'm going to use SAMP, or I'm going to use whatever internet search, make sure that, make sure that the resources are cited correctly. If you are going to read page so and so, make sure that you have written that. So when it comes to implementation, what we will need to see is, did you do what you said you are going to do? That is the most important thing in terms of implementation. We'll be looking into, you did what you said you are going to do. Again, within the implementation, there is a criteria. Look at the criteria. How did I put my implementation description? Sorry. Did I do it at the time which I said I'm going to do it, which is within your internship period? Did I check that I've done it on the correct date within the period? It's my description in implementation linked to the plan. Stepwise, I said I'm going to do this. Did I do it? I said I'm going to do this. Did I do it? So if you go through implementation stepwise like that, as you have planned, you will never go wrong. And within implementation, it's not only the description has to cover everything. What is it that I did? What is it? How did I do it? Which resources did I use? You know, but at the same time, is there evidence that you will be able to attach to prove that all what you said you are going to do, all those behavioral statements that you said I'm going to meet in your description were met? If you said I was going to do this and this and that, as much as you have written about it, we need to link it to the evidence that you have supplied. So the evidence must talk as well, to say, we call it annotation. The evidence must talk to what you have said in your description. Each and every piece of evidence must relate to whatever behavioral statement, to whatever activity that you said you are going to do. When it comes to checklist, each and every step you check. If you have done what you have said, you don't take anything for granted, because once you leave the checklist not attended to, obviously you are going to lose marks. Then you will be surprised when the CPD comes back not yet successful. But the manual has everything. If you go through this manual, do everything that the manual says, you should be able to win. The last step, okay, the evidence as well has got its checklist. You must make sure it's everything that I said I'm going to do has evidence on it. Is the evidence clear, annotated to say, why did I put this part of evidence? It should tell the assessor why is the evidence there. So linkage to behavioral statement, we should not be, searching for the linkage. You should give it to the assessors to say, this is how I met the behavioral statement. At the same time, that evidence, the quality of evidence that you submit must be readable. We shouldn't be struggling to read the evidence that you have submitted that will lead into the CPD being unsuccessful. The last step is the evaluation. After everything that you have done, you have reflected, you have planned, you have implemented, evidence is there, you are happy. At this stage, you evaluate. On your description, what we need to see is, did you learn anything? Looking from what was the problem statement in reflection, what is it that you said you don't know? Did you learn anything? If yes, if you are able to learn through the activities that you have gone through, did you apply it anyway? Did that knowledge and skill help you to do an activity somewhere else, to apply it somewhere else? We need to see that. And it must be an example. You don't just say, I was able to apply the knowledge. We must see when, how, where did you apply that knowledge? So we must have an example that, as much as we are not saying put the evidence, but you should be able to summarize and say, when did I use, the skill that I've acquired, when and how? So we need to see that in our evaluation. And after learning the skills and the knowledge, what impact did it make into your practice? What is it that you are doing differently now because of the skills or the knowledge that you have acquired? And at the same time, within the very same competency standard, is there any learning need that you feel I haven't covered? Is there anything within the very same competency standard that you feel you still need to learn. Yes, you need to identify it and give it, it must be specific. Make sure that when you write, you are learning, the future learning need is specific. This is what I'm going to do in future in relation to the very same competency standard that you went through. The evaluation itself has a criteria. You get marks for it. You need to go through this criteria to show what I've done in my evaluation description. Does it meet the criteria? Will I get marks for it? So if you only tell us, this is what I learned, you get a 0. I mean, you get a 1. 0 obviously is irrelevant. You haven't learned anything from what you said you are going to learn. But once you tell us this is what I've learned, you will get a 1. If you only tell us this is how I applied, you get a 1. If you only tell us this was the impact on my practice, you get a 1. If you only tell us about the future learning need, you get a 1. So for you to get marks, you need to answer all those questions. What is it that I've learned? What was the influence on the practice? Give an example of application and identify the future need. Then you get all your marks. Every step has a checklist. If you go through every step and you make sure that you tick the checklist, you will, in this case, you show that you will get your full marks. Before you click a button to the next step, make sure that you have answered the checklist. Don't take it for granted, because that's where we accumulate our marks. It's a guiding tool to say, are you on the right track? So that if there is an answer question that you cannot answer here, you don't see it on your description, then you know that there are marks that you are going to lose. So make sure that you make use of the checklist so that you are able to meet the assessment criteria. Like I said, the CPD is a cycle. So it starts somewhere. I think it's not Tula. She indicated that the first step before you can do anything as an intern, you have to complete your annual declaration. I'm glad at this stage, everyone has declared. Everyone has started submitting the CPD. By submitting means you have been able to select your domains, select your competency standards that are relevant, because at times you might select a competency standard that is good and relevant, but to get the evidence that you can prove, it becomes difficult. Matching the behavioral statement to that competency standard, it becomes a challenge. So make sure that the domain that you choose, the competency standard that you choose, the behavioral statement that you choose, they do link. Then you can start your CPD cycle. Don't even forget that those CPDs are not submitted by you to council. They need to be verified by the tutors. That is why a tutor was named as one of the resources that will be very important in your internship program, because they must look into your CPDs, verify everything before it's sent to council. So all the CPDs comes through to council through the tutors. So tutors plays a very important role. From there, when everything else is submitted, you will definitely get feedback. You will definitely get feedback. It's either positive or negative, but you will get feedback. So you must make sure that you look into the feedback. If there is anything that needs to be corrected, you will get it there. The feedback will explain everything that needs to be done. So after choosing a competency standard, it is very important, very, very important that you get an activity that is doable, that will match all. 75% is minimum, but if you get all your behavioral statement, obviously you get your full marks. So get a competency standard that match that the activity that you come up with should be able to match all the behavioral statement, and you must be able to gather sufficient evidence, not only evidence, annotated evidence that will say, why did I come up with this evidence? Why is this evidence attached? So that it leads whoever is assessing your CPD not to struggle. You will be led to say evidence so linked to a behavioral statement, this, and this is what I did. So in that case, you are sure you are complying to meeting your behavioral statement, those that you have chosen. So make sure that everything that you are doing in your competency standard, your behavioral statement, fully addresses what you said is a challenge at the beginning. So everything that you would have done will be meant to close the gap that was identified. I think that will be the end of my first part of the presentation. I'll be handing over to Adele, but I think before that, there will be a short break, if I'm not mistaken, Adele.
Yes, we are going to then move our break to now, and it would still be 10 minutes as opposed to the break that was planned for 1920. So we can pause this and be back at, I want to say, we're 1 minute, yes. It's 10 past. Is that too much to ask?
Yes.
So we can finish early, guys, and release you. All right, we'll meet at 10 past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back. I hope your coffee cup is filled now for this part of the workshop. I'm Dr. Yanda Yubar, and I'm a moderator for Intern CPDs for Council. Okay, so Mulalo did touch on the requirements, but let's recap that just quickly again. So you need to submit 6 CPD entries, 1 from each domain, and you need to be successful in all 6 of them. Please try not to submit all 6 at once, because then you might get into the situation where all 6 is not successful. And remember, you have 9 free submissions, and from the 10th one onwards, as Molula said, you will then have to pay a fee. So it will increase your chances to be successful if you submit only 1 or 2 or 3, maybe. Get your feedback, look at them, and maybe improve on your submissions. So from each domain, you need to choose 1 competency standard. Read through all the behavioral statements carefully. If that is the ABC, if you look in your manual in Annexure B, is the that small little A, B, and C. If there's 1 to 3 behavioral statements, you need to provide evidence for all of the statements, meaning 100% of them. If there are 4 or more behavioral statements, then you only need to provide evidence for at least 75% of those behavioral statements. It is very important that every CPD entry must reflect your individual work. So no group activities are acceptable. We know that in some institutional facilities, interns are required or requested to do some research, and often you want to do it in a group, but that is not acceptable. Even public health campaigns, no group activities. It must be your own individual work. Let's go. Okay. So for the evidence, there's 5 criteria that needs to be met. Your evidence must be annotated. It must be current, valid, authentic, and sufficient. And we will now go into each of these criteria in more detail. So if we say your evidence needs to be annotated, what does that mean? It means that your evidence needs to give us a meaning. It's a mechanism that you use to give the meaning to the evidence that you provide. It must be easy to read. It must justify why your evidence is included. It must be planned and meaningful. And important, it must provide links to the behavioral statements. So this should tell a story. This annotation and the evidence should tell a story. And the story is, what have I done to show my behavior? Annotation is not just a label or a single word next to a part of evidence, or scribbles, or highlighting certain parts without writing anything. And it's also, if it lacks a link to the behavioral statement, then your evidence is also not annotated. Sorry. So let's look at the annotation of the date on a prescription. On the right-hand side, you will see an annotation with no value. The annotation meaning this is the date of the prescription. On the left-hand side, it's meaningful. For a prescription to be valid, it must be presented for dispensing within within 1 month after it was written, and this prescription is thus valid. So it is meaningful. It tells us why it is included. Sorry, now I have something in my throat. Let's look at annotation of evidence. So how will I annotate this invoice? Okay, so let me just go one back. So can you see here on this invoice, it's at the top, it says invoice, it's handwritten, it's not very clear. Indicated there the name of the pharmacy, The batch number is shown, the expiry date, the medicine ordered, and the account number of the pharmacy. But can you see that this doesn't really tell us anything about this invoice? It's an invoice, okay? Now I've typed my annotation. I said it's the invoice from the wholesaler. I typed the batch number, expiry date, name of medicine, and at the bottom the medicine was stored after it was received. But still, why is the expiry date important? Why is the batch number important? What about the name of the medicine? So you see it is there, but it is not really meaningful. Now we get to this annotation, and can you see that the quality of the annotation that is provided here is much better? So we can see here at the top, the end phase of the procurement of medicine, competence standard 3.2E, so it is linked to the behavioral statement. I check the name of the pharmacy on the invoice and the parcel to ensure that it is for the correct pharmacy, so that's why the name is important. The batch number, I compared the batch number with the batch number on the parcel to ensure that it's the same. This ensures batch traceability. Same for the expiry date. I check the expiry date. I make sure it's not short dated. I use the expiry date to pack the medicine on the shelf according to FIFO principles. I check the medicine name, strength, pack size, and price. So you can see all of these annotations is meaningful, and it tells us a story, and it tells us what you did when you received the evidence and why you have included this invoice. Okay, if we move on to current, so current means that the CPD entry must relate to something that happened during your internship period. So if you have registered for internship in 2024, then the evidence you collect must be in 2024. So you can't use a prescription that you dispensed during your 4th year clinical rotations or working in the retail pharmacy. Then it will not be current. So your evidence must be collected during your internship year or years. If you're an academic intern, your internship might extend over 2 years. So for as long as you collect the evidence in your internship period, the time that you were registered as an intern, then it is current. So don't include anything from your undergraduate years. That will not then be current. The third one is valid. Your evidence needs to be valid. It means that it must pertain to the specific competency that is being addressed. And the specific evidence may only be used for one competency standard. So don't use the same prescription. If you select competency standard 3.4 and it happens that it's schedule 6, don't use that exact same prescription for competency standard 5.3 or for any other case. So only for one competency standard. If you make a calculation error or your evidence is factually incorrect, then your evidence is deemed not valid. If your evidence is not valid, then it doesn't matter if your evidence is current or sufficient or properly annotated. It will then, if it's not valid, then it's an automatic fail for your CPD. So validity of evidence is very, very important. If you use the wrong evidence if you upload the wrong evidence, then it's not valid, then you won't be successful. If your competency is about how to fry an egg and your evidence is about the crispiness of the bacon, then it's no value, it's not valid. If you explain how you make coffee and you tell us how tasteful the hot chocolate was, then it's not valid. So then you will not be successful with your CPD. Then authentic. For evidence to be authentic, it means that it must be your own work. In the past, we had the intern and the tutor sign the evidence. Nowadays, it is verified online by the tutor. And that verification then makes that it is authentic. So make sure that your tutor verifies your entries. And we have spoken about the verification deadlines. They also apply. So make sure that your tutor verify, and by the tutor verifying, he or she also say that this work is authentic and it is the work of the intern. So here, tutors, it's also important that you actually open up the evidence and look at it and open the CPD and read through everything. But interns, it is your responsibility to check that your tutor verify and that you have used your own work. Don't try and use previous year's CPDs. We have heard rumors of CPDs that's for sale. Council there's a process that they're going to use similarity programming, that they will put through your CPDs through a similarity check. And if you are caught out for using someone else's work, then you will be penalized for that. So make sure that your evidence is authentic. And then sufficient, your evidence needs to be sufficient. I spoke about the number of behavioral statements. So again, if there's 4 or more behavioral statements, then the evidence must cover at least 75% of the behavioral statements. So if there's 4 statements, then 3 pieces of evidence. Make sure you have enough evidence and focus on the quality of your evidence, not the quantity. 3 pieces of evidence doesn't mean 3 pages. It means that it must address the 3 of the behavioral statements. And so look at the quality of your evidence. Don't use the same piece of evidence for more than one competency standard. And with that, I mean a photo that you take or a prescription that you upload. In the GPP, the Act, the legislation, the SMF, those types of evidence that you can use or will use, you can use them for more than one competency standard, or more than one CPD. But if it comes to prescriptions that is specific to the case that you are doing, then don't use the same piece of evidence more than once. If you do make use of legislation or the GPP, don't submit the entire document. Only submit the relevant parts that you are using. And also do not add evidence that may have clauses for intellectual property. We know that in the manufacturing sector, the manufacturing interns should not submit evidence that is confidential to the site that they are working. So make sure that your evidence is sufficient. Okay, now it is time for a poll, and we would like you all to participate. So you can scan the QR code or click on the link. And then the question is, if you choose a competency standard that has 8 behavioral statements or BSs, how many of them must you satisfy to achieve 75%? And Council will show us, or will put up the results of the poll. They will share it with us. I think we should show the answers, then we can move on. Okay, there we see the majority of you says 6, which is correct. If there's 8 behavioral statements, then you need to submit evidence for at least 6 of them. For 2 behavioral statements, well, for only evidence for 2 will not be sufficient. That is not that is not 75%. Okay, I think we should go back there. There's a few more polls that you can participate in. Okay. So just some extra information regarding evidence. If you choose to upload photos, then you should add a date stamp. The photos is meaningless unless you have authenticated and identified yourself. Otherwise, it can be anyone in the photo. But just remember to always maintain patient confidentiality. So if you use a photo of you counseling a patient or you giving a talk in front of a group of patients, then their faces should not be visible. If you use the SIMF, the pages from the SIMF or the MIMS or the GPP, remember to provide the reference name and the edition as well as the page numbers. And what does this show? If you just put in a page without annotation like that invoice that I showed, what does it tell us? Does it only show that you know how to use a scanner or that you can operate a photocopy machine? So make sure that it is annotated properly and appropriately. Delivery notes, the same. What does this show? The stock was delivered, but who received it? If there's annotations on or signatures on of the person that received the stock and it's not annotated, then it is meaningless. So a hint, put yourself in the assessor's shoes before you submit evidence and ask yourself, what does it show? You can also ask someone that is not familiar with what you've done to look at it. Ask your mom or your dad or your friend or anyone else to see if they can tell you what you've done. If it is not clear to them, it will also not be clear to the assessor. So make sure about the annotations. That is very, very important. Don't submit highly glossy photos, then it might be difficult just to make out what is going on there. Try not to upload your evidence upside down. It's not professional. It must be clear and legible. Often the product information leaflet that you use from inside the packet, you scan that in and it becomes very grainy and small and difficult to read. So make sure if you open that up that it is clear to read. Even tutors, if you verify the CPD activity and you open the evidence, make sure to look for these aspects as well, that it is clear to read. Your evidence should be in one document. Then it is also easier to tell the story if it is one document and you scroll from the beginning and you can follow the whole story. And then I cannot emphasize enough, annotate your evidence. Link it to the specific behavioral statements. We want to see that. And show us how the evidence satisfy the behavioral statements. Identify your own signature. Remember, we don't know who you are. We don't know all of you. So it's difficult to make out who it is if your signature is not identified. Okay, let's look at a few scenarios, what kind of evidence you should or would provide in these cases. So I'm providing information to a patient, one patient. So what evidence can I provide? The prescription, the checklist the patient assessment sheets, affidavit or a letter from the patient to confirm that you talked to him or her, or a survey to tell us how they perceived the information that you gave them. But what if I'm providing evidence or if I'm providing information to a group of people, what evidence will I then provide? Maybe the attendance register, the presentation that I gave, the reference materials I used, the feedback I obtained. Remember, if you submit or upload an attendance register, that it is very important that the presenter's name is there, that there's a date, when did this took place, the venue, where did it happen, and also the name of the presentation. Only one presenter. Remember, we said no group work allowed, so it should only be one presenter, and then also feedback on the presentation. And this feedback should reflect knowledge and understanding of the audience after the presentation. It is not rating you as a presenter. It is, did the people understand what you said? And remember to annotate and to link it to the behavioral statements. Okay, I'm consulting with a patient versus I'm consulting with a doctor. So there will be different types of evidence. If you're consulting with a patient, obviously the patient history, maybe the prescription, a request form from the patient, the labels, the reference material you used, the blue copy that you got. If you're consulting with a doctor, maybe a reason for the consultation. Maybe it was there was an error on the prescription, or something was unclear on the prescription. The telephone number of the doctor, the time of the conversation, the reference material used. Remember, your references should be scientific. Wikipedia is not scientific. AI is not scientific. It should be scientific references, and it must also be annotated and linked to the behavioral statements. And remember to include the page, the edition, or the section that you've used. Okay, sometimes I attend a meeting. Then we would see the agenda, the attendance register, the minutes of the meeting, and very important, your own contribution to the meeting. It is different when you attend a meeting and if you participate in a meeting. So remember, there's a difference. If the behavioral statement asks for participation in a PTC committee, then you can't just say that you've attended the PTC meetings. You must show your own contribution to that meetings. I will be working with data. Okay, what kind of data? What is the reason for the data collection? Was it a screening report? There should be data analysis. So carefully think about the evidence that you will need to provide. That is why it's very important to plan your CPDs. Okay, just some re-emphasis on the checklist. The checklist for that we have spoken about is in the manual, and the checklist is on page 41 and 40 and 41 of the manual. So there you can find a checklist that you can go through and make sure that it's sufficient, it's annotated, it's linked to the behavioral statements, it's clear, and you have obscured that there's no way to identify a patient. So in summary, the evidence is proof of what you did. It is not I've read an article, or I have searched on the internet, or I have witnessed my tutor doing a extemporaneous or do extemporaneous compounding. It's not a theoretical scenario. I wanted to do a public health campaign, and this is where I should have set up, and this is the people that should have attended, and this is the blank checklist or the control sheets or a blank page. So it's not a theoretical scenario, it's something that have happened. And evidence must convince the assessor that you have performed the activity and that it actually happened. It must be professional, it must be neat and clear, no scribbles on a prescription or unneat work or unclear, and no breach of patient confidentiality. So now we're going to go through a few polls and a few, it's a bit of interaction. So we're going to look at an example. So the trigger incident is I was asked to participate in a public health campaign. So which domain would this learning trigger align with? If you can quickly answer that. See, the answer is actually there. But let's see. So I was asked to participate in a public health campaign. Maybe council can share the answers. Okay, yes, the majority said domain 1, which is public health. And it will then be competence standard 1.1, promotion of health and wellness. Okay. Sorry, that's too fast. There we go. So again, if we look at the structure of the competency standards, domain 1 is public health. So it covers public health. It's to promote health and wellness, and it's to the public and other members of the healthcare team. So you will see the promotion of health and wellness is competency standard 1.1. There's 4 behavioral statements. So now you must already know and think in your head how many pieces of or how many behavioral statements do I need to address with this? There's 4, so it should be 75%. So it should be 3 of these behavioral statements I need to provide evidence for. So let's think of a most appropriate learning title. Should it be participation in a COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital, or promotion of health and wellness, or promotion of COVID-19? So which one of these 3 do you think will be the most appropriate learning title? Thinking about what Nancy told you about how the learning title should look like. Let's see the results. If we can see the results, please. Okay, as you can see, let's just give it time to load. The majority of you said it's the first one, participation in a COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital, which is the most appropriate learning title. The second one, promotion of health and wellness, it's just a copy of the competency standard, and promotion of COVID-19 doesn't really tell us anything. I don't think you want to promote COVID-19. So, okay. Okay, so now we look at, sorry, I'm going backwards. I should go forward. Okay. Which is the best learning need based on the competency standard? I needed to learn how to teach, or I need to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns, or I need to learn how to speak in public. Which should be the best learning need? If you think about the first few slides and what the learning need entails. So let's see what you thought. We give it a minute or so, and then council can put up the results. Okay. I think it is clear that the majority of you said, I need to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns, because that is most specific to the trigger scenario that was given. Okay, so let's move to to the reflection. So the reflection is the first step. So the learning title that we've selected is Participation in COVID-19 Health Campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. What triggered my learning? My pharmacy manager asked me to participate in a COVID-19 health campaign, and I did not know what this entailed. I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns, so there's the clear learning need. And I hope to be familiar with the steps required to plan and successfully participate in a public health campaign. That is what I hope to achieve after addressing this learning need. So if we look at the criteria, you want 3 marks, you need to include the trigger, you need to say what you need to learn and what you hope to achieve after this activity. And the criteria for assessment you will find on page 34 and 35 in the Tutor and Intern manual, and that you can use as your memo. I know when you were students, that was very important to use. It's going to have a memo. So now this is your memo, the criteria for assessment. So use that to help you. If we look at the planning, so what would you write in the planning for the specific activity? I plan to make a poster using relevant, which is valid, current, authentic, and sufficient sources. The sources will then be the National Department of Health and WHO policies and guidelines, SAPC website. Here you need to add the relevant details. Okay, so if you use the National Department of Health, what do you want to use there? I will include information on health promotion, which will address behavioral statement A, healthy lifestyles, and disease prevention and control. I will verify the poster with my tutor. I use the poster in my health campaigns. I get feedback, which will then be I will have an attendance register. That will cover behavioral statement D. If you have the attendance register, I will obtain a participation letter. If it's in this case, the campaign was, it was at Steve Biko Hospital, and you were asked to do this campaign or to run this campaign. So then you can ask the tutor, or the manager of the pharmacy, if that person is not your tutor, to give you a letter of participation to say what you have done and what your role were in this health campaign. And then you link that to behavioral statement D. I plan to participate in the COVID-19 screening using the screening tool, which is then linked to behavioral statement D. Why did you do this? I did all of this in order to be able to participate in a public health campaign. So again, you see it's a detailed plan. It's in future tense. There's reasoning behind the use of the resources. There's specific details of the resources. And it is linked to 75% and above of the behavioral statements. Remember, it is not that 75% is not the limit. If there's 9 behavioral statements, don't just aim for 7 of them or 8 of them. Aim for all of them, because somewhere in them or in between, your assessor might think that this evidence is not really sufficient for a specific behavioral statement. And then in the end, your evidence is deemed not sufficient. So don't see the 75% as an absolute, and that's only what you need to provide. If you can provide evidence for everything, then go for that. Now we get to the implementation. So I consulted the following sources: the National Department of Health. You see there in brackets highlighted in yellow, evidence A, or 1.1A, and WHO policies and guidelines, evidence B, or 1.1B, SAPC website, or evidence C. I formulated the poster to use in the campaign, evidence D, and 1.1A to C. How, when, and where. I presented the poster at the COVID-19 screening area at the entrance of the hospital on a busy outpatient day. Then you add evidence, the attendance register. I did the screening using the screening tool. See evidence F. and that is for 1.1D. And I received the feedback from my supervisor and obtained the letter of participation from the health and safety manager. That is evidence G, and it is linked to 1.1B. So you can see there's a clear description of what happened, where it happened, when, how, and there's reference made to the evidence, and it is linked to 75% of the behavioral statements. Okay, let's see. Here is not options. You need to type in. So click on the link or scan the QR code and give us some examples of evidence that you think will be suitable for this competency standard. We will give you a few minutes or a minute or so to start typing, and then we can look at your answers. Okay, let's see. Attendance register, logbook, letter of participation, information leaflet, posters and leaflets, patient attendance register, feedback and survey, the poster that was presented, questionnaire, health campaign, another feedback from patients, pictures, PowerPoint presentation. Okay, I think that is a good idea. I think you have an idea of the type of evidence that you need to provide. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so here's what we as the assessors and moderators that compile the presentation thought about can be possible evidence. Source documents. Remember, if you say in your planning that you're going to consult the GPP, then we need to see the GPP in your evidence, annotated and linked to the behavioral statement. If you say you're going to consult the WHO website, then we need to see that page that you have consulted and highlighted and annotated. Remember, we are now busy with 1.1. So if you say, remember the behavioral statements say provide advice on healthy lifestyles, for example. Then you can't highlight the part and say this is A or this is B, because that is only the information that you give. You have still not provided that information to someone. So yes, you can link it to the behavioral statement because this is where I got the information, but we still need to see how you provided the information. Okay, health education tools, a detailed poster, a pamphlet or a presentation. I'm going to hand out some pamphlets after my presentation or after I delivered the presentation on the poster. Letter of participation. And please not just hereby Arianda Uber confirm that Sunny Swanepoel participated in a public health campaign. That doesn't tell us anything. So which public health campaign was it that you participated in and what was your role? So that must be clear. The attendance register, remember to maintain patient confidentiality and remember to think about where does it fit in. How many behavioral statements are covered if I only use these pieces of evidence? How many will I be able to cover? Now we get to the evaluation. So I have reflected on what I need to learn. I've planned how do I plan to learn this new skill. I've implemented what I've planned, and now I need to evaluate and look back and see what did I learn from this. So I learned how to provide advice and participate in a public health campaign, How did this learning influence my practice? I would like to learn more on providing advice to other healthcare workers. The application. I subsequently participated in a diabetic screening day. So you see, the application is not, I was able to provide advice on, or 3 days later, I was able to provide advice on prevention of COVID to another patient. So it is the skill that you have learned. That is important. So if you have provided advice here on COVID-19, or you have participated here in a COVID-19 screening, then your application should be something different than COVID. So I subsequently participated in a diabetic screening day, and I'm more aware of public health issues. And then you should also provide a future learning need, and this should be related to the competency standard that you're busy with. And that is very important that you remember to identify that future learning need, because remember we said that CPD is a cyclical activity, and you need to, so when you get to the evaluation, you think, okay, but now I've done this, but I still need to learn how to do something else related to that competency standard. Okay, so this is the end of my part of the presentation, and I'm going to hand you over now in the capable hands of Mrs. Adele Nordia.
Thank you, Rianda, and good evening, colleagues. I'm the last presenter. I'm Adele Nordia, and I'm one of the CPD assessors for Pharmacy Council, and I will be taking you through the last few slides, and these are very important. And as Nancy also said, you have a lot of resources, and please use this presentation as one of your resources. And as we go through the slides, you will see why we are saying this, that you should consult this presentation. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the feedback from the assessors and what you can expect. So as Malala showed you, you will get a report from council or from the assessor and the moderator. The comments will be dated. So even if you are successful in your CPD, please go and have a look if there is some comments. There's a lot of positive comments. There's acknowledgement of you being on the right track. There might be some suggestions for you to correct something for future submissions. So please go and check if your assessor or moderator has made any comments. And if the comments are not positive, there are sometimes some negative comments, but see that as a pointer to improve your CPD, to see what you did wrong or what you can improve on, or where you made some mistakes, especially with regards to your evidence and the annotation of the evidence. Please see your comments as a guide for your next entries and to assist you to successfully complete your CPDs, because all of us want you to be successful. We want you to pass as soon as possible, to be able to write your exam. So please go and have a look at the comments. If you do not understand the comments, please ask your tutor to assist you. And if you still have difficulty, please feel free to contact council to be in touch with your assessor if you really do not understand the comments. So if we continue, for resubmissions, Mulala spoke about that. You know, if you are not happy with the result, you can apply to council to have your submission relooked, but usually it's just something you have to fix. So if you look at the comments, so if you were not yet successful, you need to resubmit within that domain. So if you submitted in domain 1, please resubmit in domain 1 again. If your assessor made a comment that you need to select another competency standard, please have a look at that. And on resubmitting, start a new CPD unless your assessor or moderator guided you to correct something. If it's only something like patient confidentiality, that you can correct. But if you held a health campaign in January and you now need to do a resubmission in July, it's very difficult to get evidence to do the resubmission. You cannot fabricate the evidence. So if you did not collect the evidence initially, it will be very difficult to do a resubmission unless you start with a new CPD. So you should see each resubmission as a standalone and see it as a new submission, unless I said there's something that you can correct, patient confidentiality or something that you did not do correctly. So please go and have a look at the guidelines in the manual for the conditions, the application procedure, and the timeline for the resubmissions. And as Mulalu said, please submit early and submit regularly. The first assessment cycle for the year, or the second one, just finished, and there were not a lot of submissions, so please start submitting as soon as you've done your submissions. Don't wait for the deadlines. As Malala also said, the system might be overloaded, and you all know about load shedding. So once your CPD is done, submit it so it can be assessed. For the resubmissions, Council also spoke about this. If you see a waiting submission, that means the submission was not successful and you need to resubmit. If it says submitted for compliance, that means it was successful. And as I said, please go and have a look at your report, even if you were successful, to see if your assessor or moderator gave you some guidance for future submissions. What we usually suggest is do not submit all 6 CPDs simultaneously. You are allowed to submit whatever you want, whenever you want, but it's very important just to see where you are. What are you doing? Something that's not correct. You're making a silly mistake that's easily fixable. So try to maybe submit 3, get feedback, and submit the rest. And then you stay within the 9 allowed CPDs and you don't have to pay a fee. There's an additional fee of 307 Rand for the 10th and subsequent submission. So please submit maybe 2 or 3, get your results, and do the rest to be able to write the first exam. Very important for your submissions. Please, CPDs is not just another hurdle for you to complete your internship and to write the exam. You will be doing CPDs as a pharmacist every year. Be careful about plagiarism. Malala talked about that. Rianda talked about that. Similarity software will be implemented. And obviously, we've had some cases where 2 interns working at the same facility submitted the same CPD and they were handed over to council. And please do not compromise your internship. Be very careful. That may delay your start of your community service. It may delay completion of your internship. If there are some problems, you might not have a tutor that's willing to take you. So please be careful and do your own work. There's so many opportunities to do a CPD on a daily basis. There's really no need to plagiarize or to take somebody else's CPD. Confidentiality, we spoke about that. Confidentiality must be maintained at all times. Please, if you submit, we see it regularly, interns, if you submit, for example, a blue copy or a copy of a prescription, there are more than one place where the patient's name is showing. It's on the bottom, on the top, in the middle, where the medical aid details are, on the payment. So please be careful. Trailer labels, they sometimes submit a label for the medicine to show the directions, and the patient's name is on there as well with the script number. We talk about Schedule 6 registers. We had a case where an intern only protected her own patient's name and left all the other patients' names visible with their addresses. So please be cognizant of that. And if you breach patient confidentiality, you will automatically not be successful. And as I said, if that's the only issue, you can correct that and then resubmit your CPD. And please take note, confidentiality only applies to patients, not to our doctors, our hospitals, our facilities. You are submitting onto Pharmacy Council's secure site, and the POPIA Act allows for that. So if it's staff attendance registers, you do not need to protect patient confidentiality because they are not patients, they are healthcare professionals, and the information is available in the public domain. And then be very careful not to block out too much, because sometimes interns just have a big black block and then there is nothing to assess. So be careful, protect patient confidentiality, but leave sufficient evidence for your assessor to assess. You can see on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side, you can see the Smith under a scribble. Please do not scribble. Please do not use whiteboard markers. If you use a whiteboard marker, you will see they become translucent when you convert to a PDF. So please be careful of that. And sometimes some programs that interns use, they do protect patient confidentiality, but when they convert to a PDF, the blocks move. So please be careful and check before you submit onto Pharmacy Council's website. So you are now ready to start the stepwise approach, and everybody's spoken about that. You've chosen your domain, you've chosen your competency standard, but first I want to assist you with a few tips, and these are the slides that you can refer back to as a guide for you. The assessors and moderators sat together with council, and we decided it will be a good idea if we assist you in your decision-making process. So what we've done is we have grouped all the CPDs into recommended, which is a good choice for you, and you should have no problem for any intern to submit it. We have the possible ones that you have to consider very carefully and only choose them if it's suitable for the setting that you are in, and you will be able to collect the evidence. And then the challenging ones, which we suggest that you avoid. It will be extremely difficult for you to complete them, and it will be extremely difficult for you to provide sufficient evidence. You remember the competency standards were developed for the whole profession, so that's why it's easier for pharmacists to do some of these. So rather avoid the challenging ones, so use this as a guide when you select your competency standard. And this, I'm not going to talk about each of these slides and every competency standard. I'm just going to show you in domain 1. We've recommended 1.1 for you, and it is about public health. Trianda also spoke about this. It's a public health campaign, and you can go through these slides. So that's why this is also a resource for you. So, but guys, please look at this. It's come with years of experience and competency standards and domains that interns have found very difficult to pass. We have some statistics, and sometimes these are just too challenging for interns. So we have recommended 1.1 and 1.6 for you. You can see 1.5 is possible, but that will only be if you are in an area, for example, where a disaster management plan needs to be implemented. For example, I had a student or an intern that now submitted a COVID-19 implementation, and you all know that COVID implementation of disaster plans was more or less back in 2020, so please select an appropriate domain. You can see we've done this with all the domains. Here we have a recommended of 2.1, 2.2, 2.6. It's recommended. We have 4 possible ones, and we have a challenging one. You can see 2.8. If you are not involved in clinical trials, you will not be able to do 2.8. So please make use of this as a guide, make use of this as a resource to decide, and it would be recommended to select the recommended CPD. Again, domain 3, 3.1 will be possible only for interns in manufacturing, and there we have recommended 3.2, 3.4, 3.5, and a possible 3.6. And you can see for 3.5, it should include a discussion on pharmaceutical principles, and it can be bulk or extemporaneous compounding. So please use this. For 4, we did the same, possible, challenging. If you select 4.6, it's a recommended one. You must differentiate between what is a policy and what is a SOP. And please go and look in your manual for the definitions of a SOP and a policy and a list of policies that you can apply for this activity. For 5, you know it's a compulsory one. You are only allowed to do 5.3. And for 6, we have, again, recommended 6.2 and 6.6. And 6.3, if you select 6.3, you can see it's possible, but that will only be possible if you are involved in the formal training of pharmacy students, and it's best suited for academic interns. So you can look at the possible ones, but rather have a look at the recommended ones. So step 4, completing the cycles. And here we have given you some guidelines pertaining to some evidence. Please take note that this is not the only evidence you need, but these are just some suggestions that we have made for you just to get you on the right track. Again, we've put them in the various competency standards. 1.1 is recommended. You have to show how you provided the information. Evidence could include an attendance register, but as you remember in the slide of Dr. Hubert, we will have a attendance register, we will have a handout, we will have a poster, we will have evidence of our presentation, we will have evidence of the feedback, so you can remember all the other evidence. So these are just some suggestions, so please come back to this. For example, 2.6 could include a pamphlet relating to the condition, a referral letter, the GPP, the minimum standards for pharmacist-initiated therapy, a professional information leaflet, the scheduling of the medicine that's appropriate for pharmacist-initiated therapy. So you can have a look at that. And please go and have a look at all these. And you can find, again, the policies and SOPs on page 39 of the manual. So please go and have a look at the recommended ones and the possible ones. For 5.3, it is compulsory for all the interns, and it's very important you must include annotated extracts of the relevant legislation, and their annotation becomes very important. Please don't upload the whole Pharmacy Act or the whole Code of Conduct, just the relevant section, and explain why you have included it. If you look at 5.3c, it says keeping abreast. That means using or applying current or recent amended legislation. And remember, annotated professional indemnity certificate. And please remember, it's not your application form for indemnity, it's your certificate. And interns, if we talk about legislation, interns tend to go to Schedule 6. Please remember that everything that we do, every action that we take in the pharmacy, our registration, our scope of practice, everything is based on legal principles. So please, it's not sufficient only to use a Schedule 6 or a Schedule 6 prescription. You didn't know something about that. Think a little bit broader. It includes Pharmacy Act, Medicines Act, GPP, Code of Conduct, professional indemnity. It's not only Schedule 6. Domain 6, the possible ones or the recommended ones, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.6. Important for 6.2, interns fail to include their training plan, and they fail to clarify the role of the more experienced colleague. We want to know who it was, what they assisted you with, what guidance they gave you. So please look carefully at the behavioral statements for 6.2. If we talk about 6.3, you have to show us how you participated in undergraduate training. We want the module information, we want the assessment, we want to see what you taught them, we want to see where it fits into the curriculum. So there's a lot of evidence that you can add there. If you decide to do 6.6, that's the research one. You have to submit a complete research project, including results. So please, especially for the academic interns, it's not only a proposal, because the behavioral statement also say you must show us that you are able to do research. So we want to see the parts of a proposal, and we want to see how you implemented that proposal with your results and your discussion. I quickly want to talk about 4.6. That's policy development. You can see the 4.6a is apply a policy, and 4.6b is apply a SOP. Please go and have a look at the differences between a SOP and a policy. You can see we started with a definition. One is a set of guidelines, and one is a set of written instructions. It's very important that you go and have a look. Sometimes facilities have their written instructions as a policy, But if you want to use it for this activity, you should use written instructions and show us how you applied the policy, how you did each step within the SOP. You can use it for 4.6b. We have listed several policies that you can apply in the pharmacy and that you can use for 4.6a, but please go and consult the manual on page 39. Very important, please, the GPP is not a policy. It's good pharmacy practice standards, and it is not a policy that you can apply. It lists policies that should be available, but it is not a policy in itself. Now we've come to the tutors, and we want to thank all our tutors that are here and all the tutors that are willing to guide our interns. Remember to do your annual declaration and your own 6 CPDs. And yes, interns, your tutor also has to do 6 CPDs. And from next year, you also have to do 6 activities yearly. And for the tutors, thank you for being a role model. Thank you for being competent and staying up to date with legislation, and you are practicing professionally. Thank you that you are mentoring your intern. And please see this as an opportunity for self-development. And remember that you can use this for your own CPD activities as well, for your own submissions that you have to do. The tutor verification, it was mentioned earlier in Mulalu's presentation. Please evaluate the entire CPD. Make sure that all the elements are present. Very important. When the intern completes the entry, you must verify it online, and you will find the deadlines for verification in the manual in table 9. You can either accept, and that will release it to the assessor for assessment, or you can send it back to the intern if you have some suggestions for them to improve, and then you can verify and release once they have corrected what you have suggested. Please assist your interns with implementing the assessor comments. Interns do struggle sometimes, so if the tutors can please assist the interns with applying these comments, that would really assist the intern. The role of the tutor, as we all know, we have a responsibility to familiarize ourselves with the requirements and to stay up to date and to complete their progress reports for them to be able to complete and to write the exams. And you have a very important role, and I include myself in that we need to stay competent. We have to give guidance. We have to be empathetic. We have to support our interns. And I know you have had a long day, and I hope your tutors are here with you. But ultimately, you must remember the completion of your internship lies with yourself. You have to take control. You have to remind your tutor of everything that should be done. And for the tutors, grow with your intern, enjoy the journey, and think about domain 6. This includes education, so you can use this for your own CPD. And finally, for interns, take this opportunity to learn. Take every opportunity to learn from your tutor, from what's happening around you. Make the most of this experience, develop, be successful, become a true lifelong learner, and become a leader for pharmacy and for pharmacy practice, because we all we all are living for this profession, and we all want to be successful in this profession. So take this opportunity to become the best pharmacist that you can. So this is the last slide in my part of the presentation. So council can maybe take over with the survey for interns to complete, and then we will go over to the Q&A part of this presentation. So please remember to complete the attendance, and if you want, we need to stay for the Q&A now. So thank you.
Okay, colleagues, back to the office now for the Q&A session. While we're waiting for the questions, we are going to share the survey. Thank you. Survey link, rather. Adele, could
Yes,
you
Malolo?
kindly have that last slide displayed as well as copy that link and just share it on the chat, please?
The link is in the chat.
Thank you. Could it be true that the presentations were so awesome that they've covered all ground for all possible scenarios? Or is it that colleagues are tired? We are going to hang on. We are here for you to ask questions. We do believe that you may have one or two that can be addressed on this platform. So feel free, take your time. I think we were allocated about 20-25 minutes for questions. So we are going to be hanging around, waiting for those questions to come through. Thank you.
We have one from YouTube. It says, apparently we aren't allowed our phones during the exams. Can we revise this rule since some of the interns only have access to electronic versions of their sources?
Good evening. I think the interns would need to read the exam rules, but we're also going to delve into this when we have our workshop in May. It is not entirely true that phones are not allowed. Phones are allowed for the purpose of connecting and logging into the exam. It's a requirement. It is your second device that you use so that the invigilators are able to see you live until the examination is over. And in terms of electronic references, you are able to download those on time on your computer, as well as also access some of the reference materials that are approved online on Google while you are writing the examination. So you might need to reinvestigate the facts of what is allowed and what is not allowed, or contact the office if you need further clarity. Thank you.
We have another one. For domain 5.3, is the indemnity offered by the institution enough, or do I need my own indemnity insurance?
I will take this question. Now, if you look in the GPP, it says that you must have your personal indemnity, your own personal professional indemnity insurance. So you will need to have your own indemnity insurance and not that just that of the institution.
If I submit 2 CPDs, are they going to be marked at once?
Yes, I will take that. However many CPDs you submit within a cycle, they will be assessed. So whatever you submit before the deadline for a specific cycle will be assessed. If it's 1, 2, or 3 or more, everything before the deadline will be assessed.
Okay, can I add on to that? We discourage submission of, interns will wait and submit all the 6 all at once, and you find whatever you find a negative in one, then it applies to all of them. You find that the mistake that was done, it's for all of them. So we encourage that they submit and they get remarked and look at the feedback, submit, and so that you get competent on the submissions, not all of them being marked unsuccessful. Thank you.
When I go to verification wanting to verify my intern CPDs, they are not appearing for verification. And on his side, the website says awaiting tutor's verification. So what could be the problem?
Evening, sorry, Noctul. Oh, okay. Tatamaran.
Yeah, so what happens is that when you submit for verification, it should appear under the tutor's profile, and the tutor, once the tutor verifies, then it will be submitted for assessment, and it will change the status on your own profile to indicate that it has been submitted for assessment. But if you do struggle with the issues in terms of the status of the entry submitted, you can just contact the office to assist you further. Thank you.
Next submission date is a holiday. Are we still expected to submit on that day?
You may submit on or before that day. That is the deadline. Thank you.
Can we write the practice exam in June so that we can write the exam in August if we started in January, or will we only be able to write in October?
So I'll take that. So it says interns must be in their 6th month of registration. So we were going to avoid doing month to month. For each person, they will look at their registration date and calculate that they are in their 6 months. So if we give an example, people who started on the 1st of January, their 6 month would have been reached, but then the exam that's coming that they can be catered within is in August. And they will then have the practice exam in June, which will be a requirement for them to be, to be eligible for the August examination. I hope I've answered the question.
Do we need all pages to be signed by the tutor on our evidence?
I will take this one. No, it's not necessary because your tutor verify online. It is not necessary that they sign all the pages. That was previously when we didn't verify online, but nowadays it's not necessary. It's good practice to sign the first page, but it's not compulsory.
Can I use my social media platforms to do a CPD on public health campaigns?
I will take that one, and maybe Dr. Joubert or Nancy can add to that. It will be difficult to collect all the evidence because how will you get feedback from the participants, and how will you determine the impact of the campaign and if they understood the information? So maybe the intern has a great idea and it will be possible, but I do see a few issues with getting sufficient evidence.
Yes, I agree with Adele.
If one's tutors miss the workshop, does this mean they won't be able to write the exam?
No, Tula, I didn't quite hear the first part of the question. If you may repeat, please.
If one's tutor has missed the workshop, does this mean they won't be able to write the exam?
So we need to be clear when we ask questions. I would like to think the workshop, you're referring to the pre-registration exam workshop or the CPD, intern CPD workshop, so that we can answer the specific question being asked. But yeah, I think let's get that corrected so we can answer to the right question being asked.
Okay, while we wait for that response, heard of the annual fee payment that is not covered in the registration fee. Is this true?
Yes, I can take that. The annual fee, yes, is not covered in the registration fee. We didn't want to include it in the registration fee because we understand that you are coming from being a student, so you didn't have an income, so it might be costly for you to register as an intern. So we split it so that you only pay the annual fee in June. Because you'd have a salary at that time, you'll be able to pay it. Thank you.
If one has to redo a CPD example after corrections from an assessor, is there a fee for that or is it free?
No, I'll take that one. Remember, we said 9 submissions are free, but a resubmission also counts as a submission. So you have 9 free submissions, and from the 10th submission, you have a fee. And maybe I can add to that. That's why we always suggest is maybe submit 2 or 3, get feedback, see if there's any mistakes, as Nancy has mentioned, correct them, and then submit all your CPDs so that you do not go above the 9 free submissions.
Can you give an example of an evidence for CPD 6.2 provision of education and training, behavioral statement C, participating in developing learning activities?
Okay, so I'm going to try. Nancy and Adele can come in. So you, for 6.2, you need to provide education and training. So if you're going to provide any form of education, there needs to be some activities or learning activities that you want your audience or the people that you train to be able to do in order for them to learn. So we would like to see what was your role and how did you participate in developing these activities that you want to give them. It can be outcomes that you want them to achieve. How are they going to do that outcome? How are you going to get them to be able to achieve the outcomes? So it can be a quiz that they need to complete. It can be a task that you want them to perform. So any learning, something that they're going to do that help them to learn this new topic or gain this new information that you need to show us. I don't know if Adele or Nancy wants to add to that.
Okay, let me add. I think with 6.2 is 3 behavioral statements. One thing for sure is you must comply with the 3. And what we usually miss in terms of assessing, I think it's behavioral statement number 2 that talks about self-assessment. You being the trainer in that competency standard, having to teach. So they usually forget about their own self-assessment, but do the feedback session with the participants. So in most cases, they miss the self-assessment behavioral statement. Thank you.
Anonymous is asking about the workshop. It was about the CPD workshop.
Okay, I think I'll take that and my colleagues will come in. So we have an attendance, register for these meetings because as the office of the registrar, the profession does inquire in terms of how much information and how we are equipping, the interns as well as the tutors in terms of the requirements. So it is not a requirement on on the slide that we displayed. In terms of the exam entrance requirements, it's not listed, but it serves in your favor that you have familiarized yourself, updating, yourself with the information that may have changed since your registration date. So it is highly recommended that you attend both workshops, whether it is the CPD Intern Tutor Workshop or the pre-registration examination workshop, unless if my colleague have anything else to add. Thank you.
Maybe just to add on to what my colleague has said, Molano, evening, maybe also in terms of queries that are coming from colleagues as interns regarding submission of CPD entries or how the examination is going to be undertaken. As the office, the first thing that we do is to check if ever you have attended the workshop, because we need to establish the basis of trying to assist you with the query that you have raised. Where are we going to pitch it from? Because if you have not attended any single workshop, it becomes a challenge to understand how to submit a CPD entry, what constitutes a good CPD, and with the new examination that involves proctoring, if you haven't attended any workshop, it's going to be difficult to even sit for the exam or a challenge. So whenever we try to assist interns, assist you in terms of queries, we look at the fact that you have attended, because that also serves as a record from the office that you have at least tried, to attend, or you listen to the presentation, and then we can always clarify points that are murky or points that are of gray areas. But for now, like Molalo has rightfully said, it is not regulated or as a requirement to say that you must attend, but it serves and works in the favor of both the intern as well as the tutor as well. Thank you, Noktula.
What is the average time to get your response or outcome following a CPD submission?
Maybe I'll take that one. The intern can just consult the manual. It was on the slides that Molalo showed as well. I don't have a manual with me, but the dates for submission, verification, and release of results are published in your intern manual.
If I can also come in, Noktula, just to add on what Adele was saying, even on the website, the intern are able to see the dates of submission, release, and that also serves as a purpose to check the timelines as well. The CPD that will be submitted on the 1st of April has got a timeline until the date of its release. So that also constitutes, as part of what is written on the manual, the time frame for each CPD release. Thank you.
When writing a CPD entry, can we use the subheadings, example, what have I learned, what have I done, or can just as a paragraph in a story form, and subheadings are just a guideline on how to answer?
I will answer this one. Remember, you only have 1,000 characters available to write. So don't use subheadings. We use it in the presentation to show you just the format, and you can do it if you write your CPD in a Word document. You're more than welcome to write it that way. But if you do it on the website, it is not necessary for the subheadings. You will only waste valuable spaces or characters that you can use otherwise. Thank you.
I started my internship in Jan of 2024. So in August, and during that exam, I'll be in my 8th month of the internship. But you mentioned earlier that interns in their 6th month can write the exam after being competent in 3 CPDs. So am I eligible to write the exam if I cleared 3 CPDs if I'm in my 8th month of the internship at the time of the exam? And also, please confirm, should I be competent in 3 CPDs to write the practice exam in June?
Sure, that's a long question. I'm going to start with the last one. The practice exam does not have requirements. It is meant for the purpose of familiarizing yourselves, as my colleague Khotsuko mentioned, that the examination is written, the format of the examination has been updated, and we are not sure if you are aware. So we may have communicated this information in the workshops that were conducted for as part of the fourth year sessions to prepare you for the internship, but would like, now that you're here, as interns, would like to offer the same support where you are able, because it was just a workshop with information. The practice exam allows you to map and practice every part until including writing the compatibility with the system. One person asked if they were allowed phones, and I tried to clarify. So it's all of those components that allow you to mimic the exam so that you are best and better prepared over and above the preparations of studying that you would have done. So there are no requirements, except we encourage that for you to undertake the practice exam, you need to have been registered for a period, aligned with the actual exam requirements. For example, there was a practice exam in January, but some of you would have just registered on the 1st and the practice exam was on the 30th. It would not have been fresh enough for you to remember when you actually sit for the actual exam. The requirement about that stipulates be on the 6th month or the 9th month. So remember, council pre-approves these dates. And therefore, we don't write the exam when we are in our 6th month. We write the examination that is already published and approved by council. And we only conduct 3 examinations for interns in a year. So the first one was March, the second one would be August, and then the third one would be in October. So it's not aligned to the registration period of an intern, but rather what is approved by council, and it's standing. And if changes are made, it would still then be communicated otherwise. And there was a question about, do I need to have been successful in 3 CBTs? Yes, you need to have been successful in 3 PDs if you are an intern who is in the 6th month of registration to be eligible for the examination and not the practice exam. Thank you.
For references, can a reference in planning be Google, or does it need to be a website?
It needs to be specific. So if you just say you're going to search Google, then it's not specific. So you need to be website specific.
How do you query a CPD if you feel like you have been unfairly assessed? For instance, the CPD has been disqualified on the basis of absence of a signature because it was stated that it was no longer necessary.
I'm sure it was also mentioned in terms of how to contact us. Thank you, Noctula, if there are questions or queries regarding CPD. So we do have our Intern CPD platform where you can submit your query, which is going to be an online process, and then it goes to the office, and then we attend it as a case. It's on record, you do not have to wait for so many things to happen in order for you to lodge a clarity-seeking query, if I may say. If you have got challenges such as what has been mentioned by Anonymous here, you can contact the office. We do have that on submit a query. I hope it was maybe shared here. Noctula can share it on the website where they can lodge in a query, and then we can assist. We as the office contact the assessor, and we are in contact with the assessor because the assessor is contracted or works for South African Pharmacy Council. Interns do not directly, it's not encouraged to directly have contact with the assessor because the assessor is contracted to South African Pharmacy Council. So if there are queries or challenges in terms of the CPD, whether it's the first submission or the second submission, there's something that you don't understand, you contact the office, and then we're able to mediate or mitigate and in discussion with the assessor, because assessors are very knowledgeable in terms of CPD submission assessment, and there's a reason why this particular aspects are required, because we do mention what constitutes a good CPD. It must be annotated. It must be confidential. You cannot just take out any information that you want to display, whether it's on evidence or whatnot. So there will be a good reason, and with talks and communication, we'll be able to assist the intern. I hope it's clear from the anonymous side. Yeah. Thanks, Noktula.
Regarding the implementation, I wanted to confirm again if we don't have to show the behavioral statements each piece of evidence is linked to.
Now you need to show that. So you need to link in your implementation. If you write your sentence, you must link it to the evidence and the behavioral statement. It shouldn't only be on the evidence, it should be in the implementation as well.
Okay, maybe to add on that as well. Remember the assessment criteria that we have shared, which is in the manual. If you look at it, it will show you to say you get a mark 1 if this is there. You get 2 if this is there. You get 3 if this is there. So that criteria will assist you to say, did I do the right thing? Did I? So that you can get your full marks. Thank you.
When providing pictures of ourselves in the pharmacy, do we need to blur out our colleagues' faces?
No, that is not necessary, because remember we said patient confidentiality only applies to patients and not to colleagues. So no.
And Rianda, just to add to that, it's important to identify everyone in the picture so that we know it's a colleague or your tutor or your supervising pharmacist and not a patient.
Or yourself.
Yes, and yourself.
Okay. Also to add on that, in terms of pictures, you get evidence where you only see a presenter without participants. So it's very important that if it's a presentation, we must see that interaction. You don't just stand there and we only see you. We don't see who you are presenting to. So it needs the photos must talk. Thank you.
Yeah, Nancy, I agree with you. And in that case, the intern can take the photos from behind the audience so that you see the back of the audience's heads and you see the presenter from the front. So they can include pictures of that. And if that's the case, if they take it from the front, they have to obscure the patient faces.
Okay, it appears at this moment that this would have been the last question. We will then ask for a minute or two if there are any more questions coming through so that we can take the opportunity to address them before we conclude the sessions for today. Thank you.
Sorry, Mulalo, I see that there was one question that we missed. It was an intern that said, just to make sure, so if we completed 3 CPD successfully, we can write the first opportunity in exam. Yes, that is true. If you're in your 6th month and you've completed, or after your 6th month and you've completed 3 CPDs, but you're not yet in your 9th month of internship, then you can write the exam in August.
Miranda, maybe just to add to that, you have to submit all 6, but be successful in 3.
Yes.
Sorry, is this a person who's in their 9th month?
No.
Oh, 6th month.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, she said she registered 1st of January 2024. So then August will be her 8th month.
Correct, Rianda. So could I just remind all attendees to complete their attendance register that's available and accessible to them, as it was reiterated the purpose of attending, what works in your favor, in terms of how far into the into understanding what the requirements are for CPDs. We would need that against your profile to show that you did participate, and that the office, as well as the assessors and moderators, took time to equip you with the necessary information.
We've got another question. Are we allowed to do the 400 hours at 2 pharmacies?
My mic is not muted, so I'm going to say no. Remember, it was mentioned that you plan for it consecutive 5 days. So when would you then be able to go to the next pharmacy without skipping? Then the skipping or going to pharmacy A and going to pharmacy B is not it's not continuous. It's not consecutive 5 days.
Malolo, I think the intern meant, can I work, say for example, 10 consecutive days in pharmacy A, then go back to the university, do some of my work, and then later on go to pharmacy B and do their 10 days. I think that was the question, and if I'm not mistaken, that is allowed.
Okay, so as long as it's going to be consecutive 5 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mulala, maybe I can just add to that. We see that with academic interns as well. They just need to ensure that it is an approved pharmacy, especially for the 400 hours.
Are people who started the internship between Jan and March eligible to write the exam in August if they are successful in their 3 CPDs, or is it just those who started in Jan and February?
Okay. I hope I had the question clearly. So how the requirements are designed, if we're discussing a matter of principle, right? So we gave examples of people that registered in January. They already meet, or they are already in their 6 month before a scheduled examination. So you can contact the office if you want the office to assist you in calculating whether you are in your 6th or 9th month. But remember, it's not the only requirement. It's not only that you are in your 6th month of registration or 9th month. It's also the other components, including your CPD submissions and the ones that you need to be successful for. So we might want to assist the individual that wants us to calculate for them. But in a nutshell, it's 3 requirements, including 6th month of registration and its requirements, 9th month of registration from the time you registered initially, and the other requirements.
How do you ensure consistency in terms of assessments of the CPDs?
Okay, so we have the criteria, the assessment criteria, and that is what we as the assessors and the moderators use. And 25% of all assessments gets moderated. So that helps to ensure consistency, because the moderators need to report on consistency as well. And you as an intern have the same assessor throughout your internship period. So if you submit your CPDs, it gets assigned to a specific assessor, and that assessor remains your assessor throughout. So it's not that you're going to get switched in between assessors, and that also improves assessment. And we have extensive meetings and discussions regarding CPD assessments, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, as evidence, as text that you write, how the planning should look, how the reflection should look. So we really do we put a lot of effort in to make sure that there is consistency in terms of the assessments. Thank you. I can maybe just add on, we also have a WhatsApp groups and function on this assessment platform where we can type in, where an assessor can type in questions or comments to the moderator and vice versa. We also have WhatsApp groups where we communicate with one another, where we ask if we are uncertain about something, because that happens. We have the opportunity to ask some of the other assessors, what do you think about this? What have we decided? Can you just remind me, what have we decided now again? Or so to ensure that we don't, that we are not unfair and not consistent. Thank you.
When I'm in a community pharmacy where health talks are not regularly done, can I request to go do a CPD for health talk at a hospital setting when I'm working in a retail pharmacy?
Yes, I will take that one. You can go to a hospital and get approval from your tutor, or you can use a old age home. There's a lot of interns that make use of the opportunity at local church meetings or community gatherings. So there's a lot of opportunities to do this if you do not have the opportunity in your pharmacy.
Okay, and our last question. If it would be that you've been registered at one pharmacy for your internship and you resign and start working at another pharmacy, would it be that you start your internship over and therefore need to start your CPDs over?
Okay, I will take that. Not necessarily. But again, we are communicating principle. It will vary from each intern depending on how they handled their application for cession of contract, which means that you are no longer at your initial registered pharmacy under your registered tutor, and therefore it has to be an application which was presented, depending on whether if you submit it within 7 days, then you might not have interruptions. And you might not have extensions to your internship period. But if it's otherwise, then like I said, it will be case by case. It's not a blanket approach, but it's determined by the office receiving the relevant application documentation, supporting documentation on time in order to process. Similarly, if you stay in the same pharmacy, but your tutor leaves, it is the same approach, because then you're no longer linked to a registered or a tutor as per council records, and you are then not an intern at that point. Thank you.
If I may add, so if you move and you are now under a different tutor, you continue where you left off. So if you were successful in 2 CPD entries with a previous tutor, you still be required to do four CPD entries or be successful with the new tutor. So it doesn't erase what you've already accomplished in terms of your association with your previous tutor. Thank you.
Okay, it appears that would have been the last question that was answered. Thank you, Mr. Senior Manager, for that addition. From the office, I would like to take this opportunity to really, really appreciate your patience with us, and that is the interns as well as the tutors, that have taken time to appreciate and and attend this workshop while we take them through the first slide up until this hour of the day, and any other RP that might be attending as well. The office for preparing this wonderful presentation and setting, and to the people that are also linked or joined on the website via YouTube, and to the entire team, to the senior managers, and to all managers that stayed through with us in order to support and make this a success. I think from our side, as the Office of the Registrar, we are really feeling privileged to have been afforded this opportunity, and any further questions can be directed to the office in the different platforms that are available to you. And I think that would be all from us tonight until we meet again in the next planned sessions or interact as the profession. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.